The thing about this is that we're playing with human figure. We're going to break away from this. Still same concept in terms of this idea of manipulation, distortion, but we're going to do it with something that is not human. And this, again, goes into that territory of trying to break your mind of being so logical. Let's draw a classic car from like the 1930s, 20s. And we'll draw it from a certain angle of view that has, a 3/4 shot. The fenders, side of the car, front windshield, top roofing. Here's the wheels coming in, center hubcap, back rear fender, and the rear wheel. Again, a base sketch just gives you an idea about a potential angle of view that we can draw a vehicle from. But here, I am going to manipulate this. I'm going to play with it. I'm going to allow myself to have fun, try something of experimentation, see what I can actually do to make this even more interesting visually. Place a bit of shadow shape in there. There's a direction of perspective going back this way. The horizon line's up here. So now, let's take this and start doing something with it. Same thing, let's go to the front grille. There's the bumper going like this. Let's curve it and twist it. This is where those front headlamps are. Here's the top fender. Let's take those wheels, twist it, turn it. Here's that front windshield. Stretch it back a little bit more. Here's that back wheel. Let's start to actually add more details now. As I'm starting to push it this direction, out this way, much more manipulated. Visually, more interesting. So of course, when I'm trying to see these vehicles in person, you don't actually see this. Camera photography work, you can get that a little bit, but this really takes your creative mind on being able to experiment and see how far you can take it beyond the reality of the world. And so that way, when you express an action, a story, a movement, an energy, you'll be able to actually capture something much more intensive beyond the world of reality. It's not stylization, but it goes into the idea of being able to express and creatively explore. So the question is, do I intentfully try to build a visual vocabulary by just drawing from observation, or do I actually try to have fun and just draw without that sense of mindset, right? Is that the question, basically? It's a mix, definitely a mix. When I'm drawing on site somewhere or drawing from referencing, whatever I'm doing, there are times in which I'm recognizing something that I haven't drawn that much. And I want to be able to absorb that information with a bit more clarity. So I will be a bit more intentful of making sure I do multiple studies to build that visual vocabulary. But at the same time, as I'm doing that actual action of practice, I can also allow myself to loosely and freely draw it, even if it's something that I haven't drawn before. Because whatever subject I'm looking at and drawing, whether it's a vehicle, a human, an animal, I've drawn all these things in my time of practice, over 20 years, 30 years of practice of this. So I have some form of experience within that subject. Maybe not that exact subject. For example, let's say I'm studying an animal at the zoo, and I'm drawing a snow leopard. And let's say I've never drawn a snow leopard, but I've drawn a tiger. Now, a snow leopard and a tiger don't really look alike, but they are coming from the big cat family. And I know how to break down a tiger, form-wise, proportionally, anatomy-wise too. Now, as big cats, they share a relationship. I can use that archetype of one big cat and transfer it over to the other one. So I'm finding archetypes in things. This car that I've drawn is an archetype. Even though as an era of model from the 1920s may not be the same design as we have a car today, the structure and the baseline is still the same. 4 wheels, engine, a shell, and a body form. But the design silhouette can alter as a modern era design. So I can still use this experience to be able to draw those things that are out there as well too. So my visual vocabulary is not about trying to remember everything. I try to remember one thing of each type. Again, humans come in all shapes and sizes and come from different backgrounds, but we're still human. I just have to understand how to draw a person one time based on an average proportion. As I understand that structure proportion, I see an actual individual, I adjust the proportion to the individual that's there. So it's only manipulation of scale and proportion. Again, same thing. Have I drawn this specific angle before? Something like it, close to it. And that's why I'm able to draw it freely, expressively, without any thought. And same thing, could I draw that from a different angle of view? I could. But for now, we'll just kind of do some detail work. And that's that perspective again. And of course, please do subscribe to Proko's channels on YouTube, follow their social media. Future series of things they're working on, look forward to it. I've had some involvement, and hopefully we'll do more of these in the future with other shows. The question that came before was about the designing of shadow shapes. Is it logical or is it more based on aesthetic? Here, it's more based on a combination of light direction based on reality and also designing it to be appropriate for the aesthetics of the image. So I can blend the two together, but I can also be more appropriate to reality or do complete stylization. But it's intent of choice from the very beginning. If you don't choose from the start, you won't be consistent.
Being able to intuitively change the perspective of something like a car takes some fundamental knowledge. Luckily, in my Drawing Basics course, we cover those perspective fundamentals. You can start learning these skills and other drawing concepts for free at proko.com/drawing.
I guess one last question I can ask is myself, people ask this all the time, is speed. Where does that speed come from, right? And the speed comes from being familiar to the subject matter. I've spoken about this in the past many times in live streams, but for myself, I've drawn a car like this many times, maybe not this exact image, but I've drawn a vehicle like this before. And because I'm familiar, I'm not thinking, I'm just reacting and doing it. So there's no more thinking to actually do. Now it's just act and I can express freely. So it's quick. So why are you slow? Oh, I don't know what that detail looks like. Oh man, exactly how does that line work? You don't like this, you don't like that, so you slow down or start over again. It prolongs the time. Here's cast shadow right there. So when would I decide to start over on a piece? When your proportion is completely off. Especially at the state when you're trying to study something as a proportional drawing, right? So if it's like human anatomy, and I'm trying to understand it more, let's say, structurally accurately, proportion has to be solid. If the proportion is wonky, you gotta start over. You can't save that. If it's about line quality, it can be adjusted, it can be nudged a little bit. Detail level, well, you can find ways of consolidating by shadow shape, right? There's some things you can do to hide and to solve those problems. But proportion, if it goes off and you don't catch it in the beginning, and it keeps going, at some point you go into more detail, you can't fix that proportion. At that point, I would start over. Unless you are actively, intentfully trying to break the proportion. Yeah, so the question was, how did I transition away from pencil to brush pen work? Like for instance, this kind of brush pen. Just playing with the tool, simply as that. The pen I'm using right now is the Pigma Sakura brand. I really like this particular pen. It's free-flowing, it's spongy, but it doesn't fray. So this is the tool I tend to go to a lot of times. I also have this tool right here. This is a Kuretake Karapo pen, K-A-R-R-A-P-O. The Karapo pen comes empty, and I fill it with a fountain pen ink. So these tools are kind of my main tools I go for. This one gives me a very fine line. This one will give me a brush pen stroke. The last tool is a color brush pen made by Pentel. This is the actual brush, sable brush that I like. I've been using brush pen since I was a student at Art Center when I was in my 20s. But I primarily use ballpoint pen. When I was 21, 22, my primary drawing tool was a ballpoint. I liked it because I could render with it. I could do a soft line, hard line, I can blend, I can smudge if I want to. It was also easier to use because I can lightly draw and build it up over time. So I think it's still a great tool. But eventually I took my class of the one I teach now at Art Center that was taught by my mentor Norm. The dynamic sketching class forced me to use felt tip pen. We weren't allowed to use ballpoint or pencil. And the reason why is because we're trying to build confidence in our line. The felt tip pen forces you to do that because you have to commit to the pen. It's scary, yes, but the idea here is that we're repeating over and over again. So through your repetition, you become familiar with the tool, you become familiar with the subject matter. Your confidence builds, then this becomes easier to use. That mindset and that tool use translated over directly to the brush pen. Now this is just physical manipulation. Sensitivity of touch, speed, pressure. That's just time. But you have to start now. There's no point in which you're gonna feel like, hey, I've drawn with this kind of pen enough, now I'm ready to use this. There's not gonna be a moment of time for your brain to tell you this. You just have to just try, because you don't know. Best time to do it is when you're curious. You've asked a question, you're curious, play with the tool, right? Intermix. Did meeting Kim Jung Gi ever change the approach to what I do now? Well, the thing is, I didn't really know Kim Jung Gi until I first met him in 2013. This was the first time I saw his stuff and the first time I met him at Comic-Con. And I had a manager who was a friend of mine from college who introduced me to him. And at that time, I was still producing a lot of brush pen work, a lot of ink work, and I was doing large panel drawings myself. I was influenced by a lot of the same artists he was influenced by. Guys like Katsuya Terada, Mobius, right? So as a student in my younger days, I was looking at the same people he was looking at. Now again, I wasn't necessarily pushing the exact same kind of mentalities of exercise I'm doing now as I was doing back then, but we were coming from the same world. So when we met each other and we became friends, in 2017, 16 is when they asked me to join Superani. So their collective, we group together people that are very like-minded. We have similar interests. We like to do live drawing. We were able to express quickly and freely. So because we come from similar areas of technique and training, as we come together, you start to see the similarities in visual look. Now, of course, naturally over time, how could he not influence some things, right? Whether in terms of subject matter or in terms of things like technical stuff as well too. Naturally, whether I'm training it or not, by just being there with him, it's going to rub off. But it does that with all the other artists at Superani. I look at guys like Carl Kempinski, or Nicholas Namiri, Miss Jizu, or Dongho Kim. All those guys, I sit next to them and I draw with them, and it rubs off as well, naturally. Because we share ideas, we share sketches, and because we're a communal kind of effect, a community effect, that's gonna happen as a residual, essentially. But I would say yes, eventually it did actually have influence, but because I just spent time with him. But from the very beginning, was it something that was very trained? Not necessarily. All right, so here we got a bit more interesting subject matter, movement-wise. Hopefully, it gives you an idea about what I like to play with when it comes to manipulation and dynamics of action of camera, distortion, play, camera, action, movement, motion, and feeling. Yeah. So for me, drawing-wise, it's no longer something that is so logical anymore. I'm moving into the territory of trying to find ways of expressing myself through it. Then from there, I'm always present. Every single sketch I'm doing, I'm present to. Not because I'm trying to control it, but because I'm trying to learn something from it. I'm trying to live through it. I'm trying to experience through it. So every sketch that I do, it could be the loosest, crappiest sketch like this you would consider, but to me, this is equally as valuable as this. Each drawing works in conjunction as a package together that I can now use to project and also sell an idea.
Peter is also going to be a guest instructor in Marshall's upcoming perspective course. Here's a sneak peek at some of what you'll see Peter do in that course, launching later this year.